Hello and welcome to the Load of Balls second round and qualifier review show. Interesting week ahead. Teams have either progressed to the second round or they're in the loser section, knowing that one more loss could potentially see them out of the championship. Joined by Dundrum coach, trainer, dog's body, Mark Fitzsimons. Mark, thanks very much for jumping on again. You know, your last show showed the depth of knowledge you have around the local game. So thanks very much.
Dead on, John. Good to be back again.
Did you get much stick from the last round, or was it everyone helpful enough?
I think possibly there's a Dundrum man in Australia who wasn't too happy. I said it might be about 20 odd years since Dundrum have been in the third tier. I'm led to believe now it's a lot longer than that, so I put my hand up with that one. I need to check my facts.
Well, at least he kept you in check anyway, so that's good. At least somebody's listening to this.
That's it.
No, but did you had a good win yourselves against East Belfast? We're not doing the junior show this week because just with the number of games and that, we'll do the qualifier, the quarterfinals whenever it's on then next week. But East Belfast, I seen you've not done a presentation out there for them as well before the match.
It was their first senior men's championship game, and we marked it yes with a presentation. They came down, they had a good support with them. They were well organised, all fully kitted out. It's amazing what they've done from that tweet going out from David McGreevy that Sunday morning to where they are now, the whole club. It's been some journey in such a short space of time, but they go into the back door now. Obviously, we won the game, but it's incredible how just that from that initial idea to where they've got now, and they've done so much in between. So fair play to them.
No, brilliant, and all the best against Calif. There'll be no mean task against them. Mark, we'll jump right straight into the intermediate then on the Friday night, and we go straight to Leitrim against Shamrocks. I'm sure two of these teams wanted to avoid each other, but at least they're going to have another bite of the cherry. But it's a bit of cat and mouse here as well involved, do you think?
Yeah, it is. I'll be honest, I'm not a big fan of our championship structure. I'm a man for straight knockout. If you look at Tyrone and that, how they're operating, and I think we'd be best served by that. But there's obviously a strong financial argument for the structure we have, and I think it's going to win out. But yeah, the two of the pre-tournament favourites have drawn each other now, Leitrim and Shamrocks. Look, if whoever loses is going to get a second bite of the cherry anyway. So be interesting to see if either team will show their full hand. Sure, you'd want to go through the front door. I think that would be the main pathway. But again, if a team did feel like they weren't wanting to show their full hand, they don't have to, and that is the safeguard here of our back door.
The way that you get a free week though if you make the qualifiers, and obviously you avoid the stronger teams that have maybe progressed as well. So do you think that extra week teams will be wanting that as well?
Well, yeah, that's a plus point. I suppose there is a high percentage of injuries at the moment. Throughout teams, because we did obviously have the lockdown and that, so there is teams carrying a lot of injuries. That extra 7 days can make such a difference. In your preparation, getting boys back. A lot of hamstring injuries at the moment. Just that extra week's rehab and healing, but that is the benefit. That's one of the benefits of that sort of system in the back, where you do get that extra week. So teams will want to avail of that.
And Leitrim, of course, had a big win against Saville. It was never been talked before in the first half, but Leitrim's youth and exuberance sort of came through in the end.
Yeah, it was an incredible finish from them. I think Saville spurned a few goal chances in the first half. It was level pegging sort of way mostly through the third quarter. it was just at the end, Leitrim just blitzed them, opened them up. But I was looking there, we talk about the three McCrickers. Owen McCricker, then the fourth, he's burst on the scene and he got himself a goal. Pierce Rowe was sublime round the middle. He hit 5 points and he was very good from frees. Liam Middleton also got 1-2 from the middle of the park. So right up their spine, and they're big, when you see them in action, they're a big, strong, athletic team. And right up the spine there, that produced loads of scores, strong platform in midfield. But it was a really, really impressive performance, and to be so clinical towards the end and just to really put a team to bed, that was so impressive from them. But Saville might have rued maybe a couple of first half missed chances that might have given that bit of confidence, keeping tight towards progressing the game. But Leitrim were very, very impressive from what they showed there in that game.
Obviously, Saville were hampered by no Pat Haverin this week again.
Yeah, look, I seen he didn't. He was down to start the program and then didn't start, and that's if they were going to have a chance in that game, Pat Haverin had to be playing and on Pablo's game. But without him, that was a big, big ask. But fair play to Saville for keeping it really tight for so long. But again, when you just run out of steam and then those couple of goals and the confidence drop, Leitrim sailed home there. But that's a real marker Leitrim put down there from that first game. Really, really impressive from them.
And just talking about injuries, their Shamrocks have had 2 injuries into their forward line with Jordan Murphy and Conal Goff as well. As you said, the injuries are going to happen now, and it's just about how you manage the squad now.
Yeah, Conal Goff, I think potentially, a hamstring injury. He actually got one of their goals against Ballycall. Kieran Saul got the other. Shamrocks, I thought maybe they would have really opened Ali Call up more. Now, I know it looked comfortable enough scoreline in the end, but I thought maybe Shamrocks might have more in them. But again, to come back to that, it's to get the job done that first game. Did they really have to be going 100%, 100 mile an hour? Possibly not, and that's maybe they just had seen they had a job to do and they got over the line. But Conal Goff, unlikely now this next game, which is a big miss. Conor Goff back there playing what we discussed last week, which is a big bonus. Big man around the middle of the park. Kieran Saul can give him a couple of chances, especially in the league, and he's got in there with a goal against Ballycall. A good win to start Shamrocks off. Big step up now against Leitrim on Friday. But there's 2 year pre-season favourites for the intermediate and not when it starts.
And where do you think the winning's going to be, Mark, and a player to watch out for in this round?
Yeah, this I believe this is going to be an open game. This Leitrim Shamrocks game, it will be open because they are 2 highly thought of teams in this grade. The win they'll both be, I think, going full out for the win. I really do. There'll be no holding back with this one. I would be tipping Leitrim to take it solely based on their ruthlessness in the last round, and looking at their side, it's actually stronger than I originally thought. Shamrocks going to be missing Goff and Jordan Murphy as well, maybe not been back. They're not going to be at full tilt. Leitrim, hopefully a clean bill of health for them and coming through, and likes Pierce Rowe, McCrickard and Liam Middleton can produce what they produced against Saville, and up front Owen McCrickard and Conor McCrickard and those boys, if they continue their scoring exploits, I will see Leitrim going into the quarterfinals with a win there.
Oh, good stuff. The next matchup on the Saturday then in the qualifiers for the loser section of the intermediate is Saville against the Connacht. We touched on Saville earlier. The Connacht then, how can they get back to winning ways?
Could be tough. Look, they came off a big defeat there to Enrique, and they conceded heavily. They actually started quite well, and they probably should have had a goal early on. But coming off, I know what it's like. You're taking a big defeat to a favourite, and then basically within a week you're trying to get going again. Remember here that the loser heads down the route of Championship relegation playoffs. Saville, as we mentioned previously, not so long ago, Senior Championship Division 1, they will not want to be anywhere near a relegation playoff scenario down to junior football. They're hurting from the Leitrim defeat. I still think Saville have plenty about them. the Connacht might just find it that wee bit more difficult to get back up to speed again after taking such a a crushing defeat. You would fancy Savile just with that bit more experience to get over the Connacht in this one.
Yeah, it's at Clonduff. That match, it'd be interesting to see now if they can. There's just a couple of changes to the format as well. Ali Call and Ballymartin now moved to the Sunday as well. Probably just to give that extra day that for the move game from obviously the death of Adrian Dorn and James Dorn's mother. Fair play for them two boys, attending the game and she was a very staunch Ballymartin supporter, and Ballymartin, they gave everything that night on Monday night, and the performance of Adrian was something else. So I tip my hat to them boys. But Ali Call now will be waiting and wait for them in this one, and with them playing each other in the league, then will that have a bearing on how things are?
Well, you would imagine now both Ballymartin and Ali Call at this stage of the season, the championship, have probably tweaked a few things in terms of starting lineups, not in their league encounter. As you say, just mentioned Adrian and James Dorn, they're playing so soon after the mother leg, and it shows their affinity to the club. Them boys, that's huge respect to them for putting in those performances against Saul. It's a Mourne derby. You'd imagine this Ballymartin Ali Call game will have a wee bit of bite about it. Ali Call, I think, were competitive at stages with Shamrocks. You're looking now, there's still Ali Call is still a decent 15 there, and if they could come alive a bit more and maybe push themselves on a wee bit in this game, I don't think there's a hell of a lot in terms of golf and class between them and Ballymartin. Ballymartin really had Saul 3/4 of the game, ferociously competitive. So this could be a good, enticing Mourne derby. Ballymartin will take heart from the performance against Saul, who are a Division 2 team. Ali Call probably a bit more in them, and if they can get a wee bit more out of their forwards, you'd imagine you're going to have an evenly balanced encounter. Ballymartin probably just to shade it. Just a tight game. That's what you want, a good tight game.
No,
from the both them one side.
We definitely want to watch it, and I'll be interested to see the outcome of that one. The next one, St John's against Saul, the highly fancied St John's, been talked about as a favourite in this show. Saul then, they did have an indifferent performance against Ballymartin.
St John's are, looking at them, they were expected to blow Dramara away with the two divisions between them. Didn't go to script. Dramara were actually leading some stages in that game. Dramara goal disallowed as well. That'll be a bit of a shock to St John's. They probably, not saying St John's would have been complacent going in that, but they were probably expecting an easier ride than they got, and fair dues for Dramara for giving them that sort of game. St John's probably need to look at that game now and go, why weren't we operating at a higher pace and a higher intensity? They're going to have to lift it for this next game. It's going to be a completely different proposition as Saul. Andrew Gilmore, who is their top forward, really produced the goods in the last 10 minutes or so in the Dramara game. But they're going to need more boys supporting him in there, and they're also going to have to look at their defence, which maybe give away a wee bit too much against Dramara. Saul coming off their game against Ballymartin on Monday night. Again, a lot of these games are won and lost in these last 5-10 minutes, and Saul reeled off 3 or 4 points towards the end to get the better of the Ballymartin. But Ken Harney knocking over 4 or 5 points was probably their top marksman. They conceded the penalty, which Rory Phillips, I believe, had a hit twice to get the Ballymartin goal. But Saul, again, probably will look at that game against Ballymartin, a nice game to break yourself into the championship. St John's will need to do more. They know that. Looking at this, Saul again, probably the edge it, but you'd be expecting a close enough encounter here with St John's raising their game and Saul maybe not just going at the standard they would like to at this stage.
No problem. The next one then is in the loser section again. It's Bright against Dramara, and Dramara, as you said, well done to Husky and Miles, because I'm for one, and I'm sure Husky won't mind me said I thought they were going to get beat by 7-8 points, but they pushed St John's all the way.
Pushed them all away, and fair credit to them, because they are Division 4 side, and that's how they were prepping against Division 4 opposition. So it just shows you, Jamara, they can really, really lift it when it's put to them. But they've got Bright now. Now Bright are coming off a defeat to Anaclone, but Bright again for periods showed that they could go toe to toe on Anaclone. It was just Pierce McCarthy sending off before half time, left Bright second half, 14 players, and if the task was hard, it was just going to be a lot harder when that happened. But I think Mark Burke had a great performance, and Gareth George weighed in with 1-1 from full forward for Bright. I think knowing those Bright players, because they did stick well in a clone for certain periods, that'll give them a bit of confidence going into this Dramara game. Again, the big thing you want to avoid now is dropping into these relegation playoffs, which the loser of this game will. Bright have just got themselves out of junior, and they will definitely not want to be going back down to junior after 1 year. But Dramara's performance against St John's shows that they've plenty in the tank, and I would say Dramara training this week will be brimming, knowing that they've pushed the Division 2 team to the pin of their collar. So I fancy Dramara to come down here with confidence and to take Bright.
Good stuff. Okay, we'll move on to the Sunday then, and two teams that have indifferent performances with Bosco and Clanabana. I'm sure they would have hoped for better results and better performances.
True, John. Bosco were very disappointing. When you're hitting 5 points as they did against Tullylisty the other night, that's poor showing in a championship game by any standard. So you'd wonder there, maybe the potency of their attack, is it there? Do they have that scoring threat? But 5 points over the course of an hour or so is not a good return. Clanabana had the reservations over the defence, and Drumgaff hit 19 points against that Clanabana defence, so those reservations were justified. Bosco were finding themselves at the lower end of Division 3 last year, and they got themselves mixed up in a playoff to avoid relegation to Division 4. I can see them losing this one to Clanabana, and Bosco been in this intermediate relegation playoff picture. Clanabana had Malachi McGee, Michael McAllister, and Liam Devlin all on board against Drumgaff, and if them three boys can tune up their performance here, they should take Bosco.
I've seen a heavy strap on Mal McGee as well, so hopefully, maybe a couple of more days rest, he might be performing the fitness wise a bit better. But it is very tough for these turnarounds. It does seem very quick, doesn't it? It seems less than the time that's been allowed.
Big time. And you think of training, like if you boys playing a game there on Sunday or Monday, and you're trying to look at training this week, the championship this weekend, you're basically looking at your sessions. You're bringing them way down. Nearly enough rehab sessions for most of the team, just to make sure nobody gets injured between now and the next game. That's just team management and how you manage these short windows.
Yeah. The next one, it's an intriguing game again. You've got Unraked, the experience of Unraked, and the pace of Drumgaff. Very hard one to call this one.
Very difficult one. If Drumgaff are going to stake a claim, this is where they do it against the favourites. And Rake look to have little to no bother getting ahead of the Connacht. And what impressed me by Rake, if you look, their spread of scores, they had maybe 9-10 scores in that game, and had good options to bring off the bench too. So they were expected to steamroller that game, and they did. So they're on the right path. Drumgaff putting up 19 against Banbridge that's tremendous scoring. But if they want to make a statement here and put themselves up there amongst the big boys in this championship, taking and rake in this game would be a major fillip for them. Again, I would expect this could be a to and fro game for long periods. And then Enrique, just looking at what they have there, and Connor Clark was excellent against Connacht, and their forwards are all on fire, and their confidence players, their forwards. Enrique will be wanting to get themselves into that quarter final. From Gaff, can still see them having an impact down the line, but you'd like to think that Enrique, just in the form they're in at the moment, could have enough there just to get by Gaff.
Well, see you're thinking, and we'll move on to Monday then, and it's two dark horses. Maybe a lot of people not saying that they've been favourites, but an outside bet that they've been tipped for is Anaclone against Tullish. Tullish full hand. This apparently they're going well in training, and Anaclone, of course, you know what you're going to get with Anaclone, and you know how they're going to play.
Yeah, Tullish, that was impressive against Bosco. Tullish got an early goal and kind of kept stepping in front for most of it. Finished up 2-9 to 5 victors. So that was a good win for Ron McMahon and Tullish to kick off their championship. Now Anaclone, the expectation was there with them to overcome Bright, and it did. I always think this first round championship, but doing your job, getting that win, and they done just that. Kevin Anderson was sublime. He was the link man between the defence and attack. And Brennan McCardle chipping in as well from wing half back at 4 points. So they had a good spread of scores. Again, the strength and depth showed Anaclone, bringing a few boys off the bench, bringing them into the equation. Looking at their performance, it was a strong, direct, physical performance that's got them to here. They are going to be up against Tullish. They know each other so well, Anaclone and Tullish, over the years. So, you know, in terms of each team springing a surprise, there'll be a lot of second guessing in terms of that. Tullish will be buoyed by that win over Bosco. They probably thought they were going to get it tighter. Going into this game, it surely will be, again, I think another tit-for-tat sort of match. Anaclone to edge it, because looking at their all-round strength, especially around the middle, and that's where they gain a foothold here. But Anaclone will, I think, be going through that quarter-final. Tullish will be putting in a good performance and getting that wee extra, if they lose, getting that wee extra game in the back door.
Yeah. The seniors then. How did you find this weekend with the senior? Did it go to everything go to plan for you? Did you find it that any surprises for you?
Yeah, more or less the plan. Bransford getting over Glen, maybe fancy Glen to show Bransford up on that one, but Bransford got through that. 1 point, the dismantling of Burn was more comprehensive than I thought. So that was maybe, in terms of a standout, just the performance 1 point put in. For that, most of the rest went to plan, I believe.
How did you feel that? For me, it was Brady's performance against Castlewell and Clonduff's dismantling of Carryduff. I was really shocked with how Carryduff are without Arthur McConville and Packy O'Hagan. That Carryduff succumbed to 4 goals.
Yeah, I watched it live and I was shocked at Carryduff's defence for being this now Division 1 team, and Carryduff been so impressive coming up these past years, but their defence was just all over the place, and it shocked me. I was expecting Carryduff to go in with a real sort of rigid defence and a real class counter attacking style of play, but I just felt that the full back line looked vulnerable. Their half backs were primarily looking to attack instead of balancing with defence, and they just left themselves so wide open. The Carryduff performance now did surprise me. I generally thought that they might have had an opportunity to take Clonduff in that game, but they'll be now very concerned going into this next backdoor game, because they're maybe further off where they believe they were. Clonduff, as you say, without Arthur McConville, Packy O'Hagan, no Ryan Brannigan, I actually thought Clonduff were impressive enough. I like the way they work around the middle. The 3 cars were involved a lot. Rory and Paul Lively really put themselves about. Stephen McConville hit 1-3. And Paddy Clancy and Tom Close, 2 kind of new boys into the Clonduff setup. Paddy Clancy hit 2-2 and just looked like a seasoned veteran. And Tom Close around the middle, top on there, coming into that setup. So carried off. They're really going to have to get their organisation sorted this week before their backdoor game, because that was as disappointing performance as I've seen from them in a long time.
No, I'm sure the boys will be looking to put that right. Breda, of course, got it right against Castlewellan. You know, it wasn't really a shock this if you go by league form and that, Mark, that Breda overcome the town, but they're up against Rostrevor now, who had a good win against Downpatrick. Rostrevor weren't that impressive, I believe, against Downpatrick, and maybe you know, a couple of individual performances maybe swung it in Rostrevor's favour.
Yeah, Rostrevor got over that. Obviously, they hit 3 goals in the process. Sean Parr was a penalty, Arthur McMahon and Conor Doyle among the goals. But RGU, I think, were very reliant on Tim Prantner and Conor McGrady in that game. Mm-hmm. If they could just get a couple of more of those forwards, you know, assisting them and chipping in, that would make their cause, you know, all that bit better. But I don't know, Rostrevor mightn't have maybe performed how they could perform, but they'd be happy to get over that. Now, you know, Downpatrick will obviously be targeting the championship for a solid performance in the first round, and Rostrevor could be happy enough coming through that. I think they had their keeper Clark as well pull off a lot of good saves.
I better make a name check, because he wasn't happy because someone on the show called him Donald Clark, but it's Gareth Clark. He was man of the match, penalty save, 3 fist pumps, and a 1-on-1. So I think he enjoyed his weekend, anyway.
What a guy, yeah. But fair play to him. Like he seemed to really raise the troops there. But yeah, no, Rostrevor should be happy enough there. Going in the next round, they build on that. RGU now going into the back door. Question marks. You know, do RGU have enough there in that starting 15 to get them quarterfinals and beyond? Mm-hmm. You know, that's a question mark over them. But high enough scoring game, open enough, and Pete McGrath will be, I would say, pleasantly enough happy with how they get on.
Breda, how do they set up then, Mark? You know, they've got the Raws in around the middle and up front, and obviously Brandy Gallen, you know, wing half back as well. But is there any other players that Rostrevor would need to keep an eye on?
Donald Hughes, I rave about Donald Hughes. Now, he hit 6 points against Castlewellan at full forward, 3 from frees, but he's a dual player. And Donald Hughes is a boy that you could maybe get him solely focused and here all the time with a football would be on that down team. No doubt in that. Also around the middle, the former Antrim senior Brendan Hassan, now he's formed a big partnership with John McKenna. Them 2 boys are a handful at midfield, and you're looking there, that direct ball into Donald Hughes is a big weapon for them. So that's something that needs any opposition team would need to look out for in that respect. But you've the Raws there, you've also Brendan Gallen, that bit of youth coming in now too. But Breda beating Castlewellan, you know, our alarm bells ringing in Castlewellan. You know, a couple of years ago they were league champions, and it's a pretty insipid performance there against Breda. And you're looking at that Castlewellan team now, and gone are the days of the Damien McGrady's and the Fintan McGravy's, Daniel Morgan's out injured now, and there's a change in the guard in Castlewellan. They lose here in their backdoor game. They're heading for a journey in the senior championship relegation playoffs. It's been a hell of a long time since Castlewellan were anywhere near intermediate football. So Castlewellan will have to have their wits about them this next round.
Yeah. Castlewellan, they play Burn on the Sunday then, but you know, Burn had a as you said, Warren Point were always comfortable. It seemed comfortable in that game, maybe after the first 5 minutes or so. But Castlewellan need to get this right, and Burn will be looking to bounce back.
Yeah, and there's probably why I'm worried enough for Castlewellan. You know, they're coming in after that first defeat to Breda, and their next opponents are Burn. Burn, I believe, will get by them. I was looking at that Burn team against Warren Point. Burn had a very strong 15 out, and Liam Kerr was hugely impressed. Like, Donald Harris still that main scorer yet. I know Kevin McKern tipped him in the few, but again, it's that thing of having boys around him that are able to chip in, to assist with him. I think that's a big thing now in football. And when you're heavily reliant on one man to get your scores, that is a lot of pressure on that one player. But Bourne's 15 looks strong and solid. But here's where it is with the credit lies Warren. And the job that Niall McAleenan's done these past couple of years, I think it's been understated at times. Like Warren have really reached up a level here, and like it was. I'm not saying comfortable against Bourne, but it was a straightforward win for Warren. Rory McCormick with a goal there, and Ross McGarry chipped in with another goal, and then to even be able to bring Ryan Mallon, former county player, off the bench, and he just waltzed through at the end, stuck in the net. Just Warren were exuding confidence, against their neighbours, and for so long they lived in Bourne's shadow. But I would take more from that game than maybe people give credit for. That's a big win for Warren.
The also a big win for the two teams is Longstone against Ballyholland. Longstone had a great victory against Loughnane because maybe I think they've played each other about 10 times in 3 years or something out there. They seem to be drawn together all the time, but finally they got over the hurdle there of Loughnane, and Ballyholland were just too powerful for Darragh.
Longstone, Benny Coulter in, and I believe Benny Coulter, obviously the likes of my generation, that growing up, he was our down hero. And you imagine him now taking a team, young Longstone boys, and looking up to Benny, and I'd say Benny's got them boys in the out and out of the palm of his hand as such. I'd say they're hanging on every word, and he seems to have really took Longstone on and progressed them in the short time he's had with them. Looking at them, Conor Dorn and Michael Arnold have just been playing out of their skins of late, and that's the scores are coming from. And when you've got further down the field, Mark Poland dipping the balls in the air, you've got Ambrose covering that full back line and operating around midfield. Then McElroy, their full back, who I believe is a potential future county full back, and just Benny in charge and sparring that team. So great win against Loughnane Island, and they'll be buoyed by that. Ballyholland now had Dara making their debut in the senior championship, which is a fairy tale story there, to be honest. Ballyholland, I was looking at their forward. Jack Murda has burst on the scene, hit 5 points in that game. Seamus Loughran there, who's just going to be one of those players that's just going to score relentlessly in any game he plays. And then you've Tiernan Rush at 11. Billy Campbell knocking about there. Joe Murphy still putting in a good shift. So, Ballyholland overcame that. They're expected to overcome that. But again, a team you wouldn't want to underestimate by any stretch of the imagination. They're a team now that will go on. I think a team that could maybe get themselves to the latter stages.
The two teams probably would look and fancy their chances against each other. Like there's, as you were saying, there's great experience in Longstone with Ambrose. Apparently he had a super game whenever he did, with Dan and him going in the fullback and full forward respectively, and the young fellas running off Mark Poland as well. And as you said as well, Mark, usually they just relied on Michael Aaron to get the scores, but with Conor Dorn up there and the two left foots up there, it's a real threat, and Conor can shoot from distance as well. So Ballyholland will need to have their homework done on this Longstone team.
They will indeed, and again, I know we keep referring to tight games, but this is going to be another one. We're just at this stage now. This second round of the games is going to be tight, but that could be one of the most interesting ties of the round, because Longstone have great championship pedigree, and I know that senior championship has eluded them in their history, but I just think there's something about them that there's just this buzz about Longstone at the moment. And Ballyholland with all this youth coming in, and they attacking exuberant players, that could potentially be one of the ties of the round. Take one to call too.
I'm going to ask you who to call.
But Ballyholland, I would put my head in the line for them on that one.
Good stuff. Darragh play Loughnane Island then in the losers section. We just talked about them against Longstone and Ballyholland. How do you think this one's going to go? And it'll be local derby as well.
It is a derby. Really, only the village Crossgar separating the two teams. Darragh, will want to hold on to their senior status now they've got it. It's hard earned. They'll want to keep it. Loch and Island really haven't been massively impressing me this season. You know, I know Dan came back in there for the championship, and you know, Ben O'Reilly, their centre half, Johnny Flynn in midfield. The two McClements, Aaron and Declan up top, and Rory Mason still weighing in with the scores. But I don't know if they've clicked yet. And Jody's a good man. Jody Gorman's a good man for getting teams, you know, up a level and on par for championship. But they haven't really set themselves alight yet. Dara Cross will have no fear playing Loch Island, and Dara, again, it's getting that other, you know, bite of the cherry in senior championship football. This is I can see Dara overturning Loch Island in this one. I generally can. I think the hunger will be there to get over them, and that's probably going to be a mild shock if they do, unless Loch Island can somehow find another gear in themselves. But Dara Cross will not fear that game, and all the potential to take it.
Good stuff. Next one up, Clonduff against Bransford. We mentioned Clonduff and how impressive they were. Bransford got over the line against Glen. It wasn't a great game. I watched bits and pieces of it, to tell you the truth, but it's working for them.
Yeah, the Stevie Poacher template. And I know Stevie's template of play gets a lot of derision, but I just find it fascinating the way his team's set up. On one particular aspect, I think has gripped the imagination is the use of Mark Reid. Now, Mark Reid as a goalkeeper is a handy enough outfield player, but it's just great the way they're utilising him. He is coming out and, you know, contributing the stages of play. Got that great score against Kilcoo. I think that's great, and it makes other teams think too. So I'm intrigued to see how Poacher's system here, you know, evolves with Bransford. But this isn't a vintage Bransford team by any stretch of the imagination. So that system will make them a lot harder to beat. Now, Patrick Sheridan got that late goal, get them over the line against Glen. Danny Savage hitting 5 points was their main man, and Ryan O'Higgins chipping him at 3. But I thought Glen might have sprung a surprise there, but they kept Shane McCartan relatively quiet. Bransford going forward now, I don't think there's a championship in them, but there's possibly one big performance in them. Mm-hmm. They'd be happy to get over Glen.
Yeah. I see Stevie put the cat amongst the pigeons with a wee newspaper headline. Kilcoo make me look like the Barcelona manager. So, you know,
well, Ronald Koeman got the job, so
maybe it was this time of the Everton he's talking about. Okay, the next one up is Clonduff against Bransford, Castlewellan against Burn. How do you think then the RGU against Carryduff match will go? Obviously, the two teams, RGU had a good performance against Straver. Carryduff obviously suffered that heavy defeat against Clonduff.
DJ Morgan, Carryduff manager, he'll be looking at a reaction, and they cannot play as bad as they did against Clonduff. So I'd imagine he'd rejig the setup, possibly get Sean McGonigal in from the start. He needs to make changes there to give them something different in this game. Downpatrick are coming off that defeat to the Straver, and I worry, you know, what they conceded there. Maybe the defence would need to look at, you know, how they're operating in terms of tightening up. Carryduff we'll get over this. We'll get over Downpatrick. Downpatrick, again, it's the reliance on McGrady and Pranter. If they could get, I know Pete Turley there's 14, you know, possibly coming out, moving about, maybe even to change it up a bit of route one into him. Downpatrick will make a real gameless, but you're going to get, I think, a big reaction from Carryduff that should take them over the line.
Do you think that with Downpatrick watching the match on Monday night, that there is a potential weakness in the full backline defence? You know, if the half backline is attacking, there's a bit of space there for the direct ball in.
Definitely, John, and that's when maybe throwing in the mix. I know it's a managerial decision and it's a gamble, but if you did put the likes of Pete Turley up against Conor Cassidy, you know, a battle there 14-3, something different, maybe Carryduff aren't expecting. But look, DJ Morgan's a shrewd man, the Carryduff manager. he'll have any of the sort of errors in their play ironed out, I would believe, this week, and you'll see a much more compact carried up taking the field against Downpatrick.
Good stuff. All right, the last one then. Mayor Bridge against Glen. Two teams that know each other very well. Mayor Bridge done well against Kilcoo, but you know, if the crossbar had been a wee half an inch higher, maybe you know, the ball might have ended up in the net. And Glen maybe missed an opportunity to turn over Bransford.
Yeah, Glen did miss an opportunity there. Like, it was a late goal that conceded, but possibly at the end, scoring 1-7 as well. You know, I know Bransford have that packed defence and that now, but possibly a missed opportunity for Glen. Mayo Bridge, by all accounts, were maybe slightly too conservative against Kilcoo. Maybe didn't go for it enough, but their discipline as well was maybe a couple of black cards and that. So the Bridge might want to just rethink about how they approach the championship from here on in. Maybe be a wee bit more expansive and open-minded in terms of their play. I believe Kieran McKeever's manager, Shrewd Man, if he can stick with this Bridge team for another 2 to 3 years, I think you'll see them up there at the top table again. But I do think they'll get over Glen here. And if they are looking to maybe play a wee bit more positively and look to attack that bit more, which I think they will against Glen, they'll get over this hurdle. You know?
No, and I wanted to leave the last game. We mentioned about on last year's winners against last year's finalists. Now, how do two teams approach this, knowing that the other team's got a chance to progress? How does you get your players up for it, and does it really? Is there a marker to set down or anything like that? Do you think, Mark?
This is a situation now because of our championship structure where there's you could look at it 3 or 4 different ways.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at it from a more points perspective, they've got by Burn. Say if they get by Kilcoo here, 1 point get themselves in the quarterfinals. Realistically, Kilcoo and Burn, could still come through and be in those quarterfinals. So
yeah.
1 point could realistically beat Kilcoo and Burn, but yet still have them in a quarterfinal draw. So the final last year was 1 point were so close. Now they didn't get over the line. 1 point were really wanting to get that hoodoo off and beat Kilcoo in championship football. So I believe they'd be going all guns blazing for this, and the way they defeated Burn, they'll be going in with a lot of confidence. But Kilcoo are on a different level. They're still the masters of managing games like this. They came through there against the Bridge. Many people thought the Bridge would get closer. They didn't. Kilcoo just always enough in their arsenal to do what they have to do to get by. I think Kilcoo will take this game. They have still so much more in them. They weren't massively impressive against Mayo Bridge. They always managed to, tailor their performance that they're always building further as championship goes on. I think they'll take 1 point, and again, it's another case of you'll see 1 point coming in down the line. But what if 1 point won this game? What that would do for that club and their confidence would be immeasurable. But Kilcoo being Kilcoo and the smartness and the craft they have, I can see them taking this one.
I seen an interesting tweet from the goalkeeper Guy McMahon, and he was saying that I was saying in commentary during the game that did 1 point need a big scalp, to sort of get to that next level that people really thought that they could obviously win it. I sort of said they didn't believe in that sort of thing. If they're good enough, they'll beat most teams, and if they're not good enough, a team could beat them. Very simplistic, and maybe that's just the way to approach things.
True, and I can see where he's coming from. It's getting over Kilcoo. Now, them getting over Kilcoo will be huge for them, but if they do defeat Kilcoo, it'll be water off a duck's back. Kilcoo, they just know they're going to come again, and yeah, but again, I think the job that Niall McAlean's done with 1 point's been very understated, because he has done a great job for them in the outfit he has. Like, he's near enough a full strength team to operate at the moment, but Kilcoo, Kilcoo will want to go through the front door. they'll want to keep the lid on the Warren Point Euphoria for a bit longer yet. And there's a hell of a lot more in that Kilcoo team. And I would expect Mickey Moran maybe to throw one or two surprises in team selection. You might see a few boys coming in that maybe weren't in from the start against Mayo Bridge. They've always something there to make the opposition second guess themselves.
No, that's brilliant, and it's going to be interesting to see the team selections coming up, because for this now it is a wee bit of especially for the loser section. There's that lockdown, getting ready for this. It all comes down to one game before you could be in a playoff for intermediate football.
Yeah, and teams will not. There's, like I'm talking there. Say if Castlemaine lose here to Burn, well, basically you have to lose 4 in the senior championship and intermediate championship. You have to lose 4 games. When you lose those 4 games, that's condemning you to the grade below. But there's some clubs there that have been a long time knocking about at senior football, and they'll not want to be returning to intermediate football anytime soon. So the high stakes game is that Castlemaine Burn game.
Yeah,
keep Castlemaine out of that picture. But this round of championship is very hard to predict in a lot of cases, and I think we're going to get some good football again. One other aspect is you've got to be looking at teams as well, the injury threat here. Teams maybe out last weekend, out this weekend again, and they've only that week there, and they're trying to get training sessions in. You could start maybe seeing, I know it's happening in other counties at the late stages of their championships, that injuries are really starting to become a big impacting factor.
No, definitely. Hopefully you can see me on the screen. It's just it's a rushed production because of it is so quick turnaround. We only found out the fixtures and the venues on Tuesday night. So Mark, thanks a million for coming on board. Hopefully we'll get it done on Tuesday night from now on, once we know that that we have fixtures, and that, because the next round that's the real start of the real championship then.
It is, and we're looking here now. We're once you get to the straight knockout, it's what people desire. It's what the players, I think, want. It's what clubs want. It's what supporters want, and that's where it really starts to heat up. We're still in this phony war stage. And
it is so funny to call it, because you don't know what. In the winners section, it's just a free hit at the quarterfinals. That's basically what it is. There's nothing to be won or lost. Maybe psychological if you're playing a certain contender, but it's just basically a free hit.
It is, and I'll draw back an example. Warren Point could conceivably have Burn and Kilcoo beat, and them 2 teams could be coming back to hit them in the last 8 again. That's the format, and that's these things that can't happen with this format.
You can play the 2 games. You could play them. You could get, say, the beat Kilcoo. You could play Kilcoo, then Burn in the quarterfinals, and then Kilcoo in the semi-final, and then you could play the same team 4 times.
Exactly.
It'd be amazing if that happened. It's bound to happen at some stage anyway. But as I said, the fun starts next week. Folks, that's our quick prediction of how things will pan out this weekend. Let us know your thoughts, and hopefully we will have the junior review as well next week as well, and look forward to seeing you. Mark, as always, see you next week. Get as many games as you can. I'll foot the bill for you. You send through your receipts.
I traveling expenses.
Just don't be going too far. Where are you going to?
No, I'll stick close to home.
Mark, thanks a million. Well done.
All right, so on.
Cheers.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.